Hey there, how's everybody doing today? Fantastic? Hope so. My past few talks have been on Hebrews and the idea of considering Jesus, thinking on him a little bit, who he is, what he's done, what he promises, all kinds of stuff like that. Last week, it was on the idea of Jesus as an apostle and priest. And today I want to look at Jesus in a storm, two storms. What he did, he used his power. And we're familiar with these stories. Jesus calms the storm. Amazing stuff. Jesus walks on water. Whoa, what really? But what did he do that for? What was that display of power for? And does that have anything to do with him being an apostle? And the idea of an apostle being a missionary, somebody sent with a message from God. I want to look at that for a little bit. One of the most famous ones that elicits either amazed faith or derisive sneers is Jesus walking on water. Fairy tale, right? Some people think. Mark 6, the boys are out in a boat in a storm at sea. Jesus comes walking towards them on the water. And we always recount this story. I do mainly, usually when I'm talking about it, about Jesus walking to them. And we like to draw all kinds of comfort from that. Like Jesus will come to you when you're in a storm. And when Jesus gets in the boat, it's all peaceful and calm. There's all kinds of things that we like to do to encourage ourselves. But it's that's not exactly what happened. It's not really the main thing what was going on there. Mark 6:47. Late that night, the disciples were in their boat in the middle of the lake, and Jesus was alone on the land. He saw they were in serious trouble, rowing hard and struggling against the waves. And I don't know when he first noticed them, but he didn't rush out to help them because it says this. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning. Jesus came towards them walking on the water. He intended to go past them. So we put these things together. Like he's praying and he can see them out there on the lake. And well, they're having a hard time, but he doesn't do anything about it. He keeps on praying. Maybe he prays for them. He's praying about something though. And I think we're going to find out what that is later. But I think there's something else on his mind. He's aware of them, but it's not, his main concern right now. And I don't know. So it says in the middle of the night, he saw them. And then it says at 3 o'clock. So I don't know if it's different in their time frame, but for us, that would be like, 12 o'clock, he saw them. 3 o'clock, he starts walking on the water. And he's coming towards them, but he intends to go past them. Jesus wasn't walking on the water for them. He, he had intended to go past them. And it's like that embarrassing moment, maybe when somebody, you see somebody waving and you're like, oh, you wave back. And then you realize there was somebody behind you they were waving to, or, they come up to shake your hand and then it's not you. It's awkward. That's kind of what it feels to be what's happening here. It's Jesus, except they weren't even excited to see them. They were terrified while reading the second. But it says two things to me. First of all, the disciples were fine because Jesus isn't callous. Like if they were in serious trouble, he would definitely have done something, I think. Or even, if you take the long view, even if they had died, they're going to heaven or something. So, or not something, they're okay. Like, like the word says, like, don't be afraid of the one who can destroy your body, but can't do anything about your soul. Fear the one who can do something about your soul. And Jesus knew their soul was okay. So some temporary physical discomfort is all right. But it says to me that, sometimes when we're like, well, I'm struggling, why isn't God doing anything about it? And I think it's because God knows you're okay. It's not as bad as you think it is. You're going to be all right. So maybe, that's maybe a first little lesson or encouragement we can take out of this. Sometimes maybe we're struggling. We're in the middle, feels like a bad place. We're in the middle of the night. We're in a storm. We're struggling. We're not making any headway. Why doesn't God intervene? God knows you're okay. He knows you're okay. Second thing is that there is something more important. His friends are struggling on the lake there, but there's something more important that he's doing. And it's because he's on a mission from God. There's something he's got to do on the other side of the lake. I'll pick it up at verse 49. When they saw him walking on the water, they cried out in terror, thinking he was a ghost. They were terrified when they saw him. But Jesus spoke to them at once. Don't be afraid. Take courage. I'm here. And then he climbed in the boat. The wind stopped. They were totally amazed, for they still didn't understand the significance of the miracle of the loaves. Their hearts were too hard to take it in. They didn't get it. And in the context of what I'm talking about, they didn't get what Jesus was using his power for. They didn't understand why he was walking on the water. They didn't understand why he calmed the storm. And I think we don't get it either. They didn't understand why he fed all those people with just a few loaves and fish. And as I said earlier, we usually focus on us, that Jesus is using his power to help the disciples. But he's not really. It's kind of a secondary effect. He's not calming the storm to bring glory to himself. He's not walking on the water to show off. Nobody sees this except the disciples. And even when they see him, they're terrified. They're like, what is that? Like, there's something. I can just imagine like one of the guys in the boat there, like maybe Thomas, he's like, did you see that? Like, there's a little white blob bobbing up and down. What is that? Like, it's dark, cloudy, maybe hard to see. What is that? I don't know. It's coming towards us. Danny, we got to get out of here, guys. They're rowing. Peter, row hard. Let me get beside you. They're pumping. And then Jesus is like, hey, guys, don't worry, it's me. Whoa, what? Gets in the boat, the wind stops, their jaws drop to the floor. What just happened? Who is this guy? Like, you know, even if you didn't believe in ghosts, you might wonder, what is that? People don't walk on the water. They're terrified. We would be too, probably. What's going on here? They weren't even happy to see him. It wasn't about them. He was on his way to do something. What was he doing? He's on a mission from God. Mark tells us, verse 53. After they crossed the lake, they landed in Gennesaret. They brought the boat to shore, climbed out. The people recognized Jesus at once. They ran throughout the whole area, carrying sick people on mats, wherever they was, to wherever they heard he was. Wherever he went, in villages, cities, countryside, they brought the sick out to the marketplaces. They begged him to let the sick at least touch the fringe of his robe, and all who touched him were healed. Jesus was on his way to share the love of God with the people. That's the main event. There's revival coming. People are getting healed. Everyone's excited to see Jesus. God is moving. That's what Jesus was using his power for. In short, the kingdom of God. He's on a mission from God to bring the kingdom of God to the people of the earth. Something similar happened. So it wasn't about the disciples. It wasn't about me. There's a mission here. He's using his power not for his glory, not for them, but to fulfill the calling and the mission of God, to spread the good news, to spread the kingdom, to set the captives free, to bring healing to the sick. All the benefits of the kingdom of God. And a similar thing happened the other time. The first time, actually, this was the second time, but the first time Mark records Jesus calming the storm is in Mark 4. Similar thing happened, teaching. They get in the boat, they're heading across. So they took the boat, started out, leaving the crowds behind, although other boats followed. But soon a fierce storm came up. High waves were breaking into the boat, began to fill with water. Jesus is sleeping in the back of the boat with his head on a cushion. The disciples wake him up. Teacher, don't you care? We're about to drown. When he woke up, he rebuked the wind and said to the waves, silence, be still. Suddenly the wind stopped and there was a great calm. Just like that. And then he asked them, why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? The disciples were absolutely terrified. Who is this man? Even the wind and the waves obey him. And again, Jesus isn't concerned about the disciples. In fact, he kind of rebukes them a little bit. What are you so afraid of? He's not showing off his power. This isn't about making the disciples' life easier. It's about getting to the other side of the lake. Like, if you guys are so terrified that we're not going to make it through the storm, all right, I'll calm the storm so we can get there. Because there's something that has to happen on the other side of the lake. You guys, you don't understand. I'm on a mission from God. The wind and the waves can't stop me. The wind and the waves can't stop me. We're not destined to drown here. Don't you know I'm on a mission from God? There's something I got to do over there. He's crossing the sea, the lake, Sea of Galilee, into Gentile territory. He's going to the outsiders today. And he's not letting hell or high water stop him, as we like to say. Literally, neither hell nor high water could stop him. And I'm saying again, it's not about the disciples. He's on a mission from God. A man who has an appointment with the Almighty is on the other side of the lake. And you know the story well. It's the Gerasene demoniac, Mark 5:1. So they arrived at the other side of the lake in the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus climbed out of the boat, a man possessed by an evil spirit came out of the tombs to meet him. And it describes how he lived in a graveyard. He's violent. He can't be restrained. Even with chains, he breaks them. He's howling all the time. Our dream convert right there, right? This is the focus of our strategic evangelism meetings. Let's target the most likely person to have the biggest effect for the kingdom of God. Who's the guy that we need to try to target to get saved? Hey, there's a guy out in the graveyard there, and he howls all the time. He walks around naked. Everybody's scared of him. Why don't we get that guy saved? That seems like a good choice. So Jesus confronts the demons in the man, casts him into a herd of pigs. Send us into the pigs, the spirits begged. Let us enter them. So Jesus gave them permission, and the pigs, demons enter the pigs. They go running off a cliff. They all drown. Everyone finds out what happens. They're all terrified. Then those who had seen what had happened told the others about the demon-possessed man and the pigs, and the crowd pleaded with Jesus to go away and leave them alone. Worth it? Calm the storm, cast a legion of demons out of this guy? Why'd he do it? Just to get run out of town? Would you please leave? We don't want you here. What was the display of his power for? Again, I'll say Jesus was on a mission from God. That man had an appointment with the Almighty. And in one case, the first time I read, where he walked on the water, calmed the storm, revival broke out. But in this case, it was to call a missionary, another missionary with a message from God. And on the surface, it looks like a failure. Like there's not much fruit here. Maybe leave the Gentiles alone, Jesus. They don't want you. Sure, it's great that we got this one guy delivered, but I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it didn't get a lot done. And the encouraging thing here is that God's work doesn't stop after Jesus leaves. Like Mark's story follows Jesus because that's what Mark's writing about. But you could write a sub-story or a side story and follow this man, this demon-possessed man who got delivered. What did he do? And we know what he does because it tells us here. Verse 18, as Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged him to go with him. Can I go with you, Jesus? Jesus said, no. Go home to your family and tell them everything the Lord has done for you and how merciful he's been. So the man starts off visiting the 10 towns of the region and began to proclaim the great things Jesus had done for him. And everyone was amazed at what he told them. The homeless, Gentile, demoniac outsider who nobody thought would amount to anything, not the greatest target for our evangelism campaign, becomes the first person we read of being sent by Jesus with a mission and a message to the Gentiles. You could call him the first missionary to the Gentiles, long before Paul even arrived on the scene. We don't know if he's a follower of Judaism. We don't know how he knows about the Hebrew religion, or if he even knows about it at all. He's just been set free and then sent out. Go and tell your people what God has done for you. And now the good news of Jesus can spread all through the region of the Decapolis. There's 10 cities there. That's what he says he does. He goes and tells everybody in all that whole region what God did for him. All because of this guy that nobody thought mattered, who was in a graveyard, howling, homeless, violent. God set him free. That's what the power of Jesus was for. Getting across the lake, calming the storm to get there. It wasn't for the disciples. It wasn't for the glory of Jesus. It was a mission from God to touch this man, set him free, so he could tell everybody in that whole area. See, people that Jesus couldn't talk to because they didn't want him there. Jesus, get out of here. But this guy who Jesus saved, he went through all that and he told everybody about that. And so there's a few lessons I'd like to draw from these two stories. The first, I already said many times, God's power isn't just for us to feel happy and secure. It's way too selfish to think of it that way. The gifts and the abilities he's given us aren't for us to huddle together and feel blessed or to make our lives easier. God does that. God strengthens us. God helps us. God blesses us. But we're supposed to pay it forward and be a blessing in turn. And God's power towards us is for the purpose of accomplishing his mission, building his kingdom, spreading it around here on this earth. That's what you and I are empowered to do. And a second thought is you can't stop God. Everyone begged Jesus to leave, like, get out of here. But it was okay because the seed had already been planted in that guy. You can't stop God. You can't stop God. Another lesson is that you matter. Like, so I'm trying to say, if you feel discouraged, like, oh, people are doing this and that and saying this and that and legislating this and that and whatever, you can't stop God. No matter, because we're still here. They don't want God, but we're here and God's in us. God's power is with us to do whatever he wants us to do. And so that leads me to my third thought. You matter. Like, you might think you don't have anything to give or any proper training or whatever, but you can just tell Jesus, or you can just tell people what Jesus has done for you. If Jesus could send out this guy, like if we look at this guy who was demon possessed, he didn't have any training. Jesus didn't say, now here's the 4 spiritual laws and here's the, whatever, that glove, right, with the colored fingers and blacks for sin and reds for the blood and whites for this and gold and blue and all. You need to know all those things and then you can tell people how to get to heaven. He just said, go and tell them how God has been merciful to you. Just go and share your story. Tell them what God did for you. So I just want to encourage anybody who feels like, well, I don't have anything to give. Yes, you do. You have a testimony. Just tell people what God did for you. You matter. Because, like, they were begging Jesus to leave. And I know what that's like in a really minor way. Like, very, very, not even. But if people find out I'm a pastor, it suddenly changes things. Oh, you're a pastor. I didn't know that. And suddenly it's awkward. And there's people who don't want to listen to me or talk to me simply because I'm a pastor. If they don't know I'm a pastor, it doesn't matter. But as soon as they find out, well, now that's different. You can talk to people I can't talk to. You can talk to people that religious leaders can't talk to. Because you're just an ordinary dude or dudette. And you've got a testimony. So you matter. You can reach people I could never reach. Even, like you see this video, you pass it on. They don't care what I have to say. They care what you have to say. And a final lesson I could draw out of this is that everyone else matters. Like, if there's hope for a person, we might look at and say, they're wandering in a graveyard. They're acting weird. They're violent. They won't listen. I don't know how we can even help them. But Jesus could. And they matter because that person became an evangelist, a missionary throughout a whole region that Jesus couldn't go to. So just the thought, everybody matters. Everybody's worth time, thought, prayer, energy, your gifts, everybody. We should never consider anybody outside of the reach of God. Anybody can be touched by God. And just like Jesus, we should use whatever power we've been given to reach whoever we can. The outsiders, this world is full of outsiders. And once we found the outsider, we just need to do what Jesus did. Help them out with the power God's given us. And the greatest thing we can give is the message of reconciliation, just your testimony, what God has done for you. That Jesus saved me, he'll help you too. Everybody needs that. Spread it around, would you? God bless you. Have a great day.